Welcome to today's Planning Commission work meeting. This is Wednesday, June 9th, and starting at 5 p.m. I will begin with reading the chair's statement about the Open and Public Meetings Act. In accordance with Utah's Open and Public Meetings Act, the chair has determined that conducting meetings of the Provo City Planning Commission with an anchor location such as the council chambers presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. These are the facts upon which he has made this determination. The World Health Organization has classified novel coronavirus disease, also known as COVID-19, as a pandemic. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention state that COVID-19 is easily spread from person to person between people who are in close contact with one another. Utah County is currently listed as having a moderate level of coronavirus transmission as determined by the state's transmission index metrics. Physical distancing measures will be difficult to set up and maintain in the council chambers and other meeting rooms. Therefore, for the next 30 days, all meetings of the Provo City Planning Commission will be conducted entirely via electronic means. Meetings are broadcast live and available later on demand at youtube.com/user/Provo Channel 17 and at facebook.com/Provo Channel 17. Agendas and support materials are available at provo.org/planning commission. To make a public comment or join a meeting by a telephone, follow the instructions provided on public notices of each meeting. To send comments to the Provo City Planning Commission members or weigh in on current issues, email them at dspublichearings@provo.org. Signed by Dave Anderson, Planning Commission Chair, and Bill Pepperoni, Director of Development Services, on the 27th of May, 2021. And we will now start with our study session agenda. And Robert, will you go ahead and get going with the general plan visioning and goals discussion?
You bet. Thank you so much. And I'll just also mention that Robert Knudsen is here with us.
I'm not hearing anything.
Hello?
Can everybody else hear me?
Yeah, Robert, I can hear you.
Okay. Came up. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. So I was just going to also mention that Robert Knudsen is here with us, Laurie. And we're excited to have a general plan update just to kind of show you where we're at currently. And then we want to put you guys to work tonight a little bit and get some input from you on some things that we need some help with. So joining us tonight is Becky Zimmerman. She's with Design Workshop, who is our consultant on this project. And I'm going to turn the time over to Becky and let her kind of introduce what we're going to talk about.
Hi, well, good evening, everybody. Great to see you. Oops, I'm going to get this out of the way so I can actually see. So just want to give you an update on where we are, where we're going, and some kind of key issues that we would like to get your input on, and Robert will be facilitating that discussion. So we're nearing the end of what we had termed phase 2. And so we're working on kind of the project and program recommendations and going forward here very quickly to start to draft the document. We have lots of ingredients and it's time to kind of put the recipe together. So we will be diving into that shortly. We have had some really amazing community engagement in April in our second community engagement window. So we had fewer online meeting attendees, but more than double the number of responses online. And in particular, we got some better representation of residents around geographically in Provo that was probably more closely mirrors the actual population distribution. And we also, one of the things we were really excited about in this participation is that we got significantly more young respondents. So I would say, ages of 18 to 30 participated in this. So almost 1,000 responses, 2,500 website visits. So what have we learned so far? There's a lot of alignment in the community on vision and values. So when we asked about what are your current values, top values, clearly the environment, open space, nature, recreation, quality of life, being a university town, arts and culture are all kind of in those top areas. And then we asked about, well, what's really important about the future and those core values that Provo wants to be known for and embrace in the future. And similarly to current, open space and recreation comes up at the top, but then closely followed by housing affordability, transportation, diversity and inclusivity, and being a leader in sustainability. In our work group meeting that we had, we've had 2 in the last 2 weeks. So 2 weeks ago, we presented the work group with 3 versions of a vision statement and asked them to kind of pick and comment on what was their favorite or what were the components of the favorite. And we had some really great response. And the conclusion is we're going to take pieces or most of the first vision statement and combine it with the third one to get to what the work group felt like was really the best representation for Provo's vision for the future. The key themes that emerged through the community input and the review of all of your current plans, other key issues and points of kind of data points that we've received really come into 6 themes of sustainability, stewardship of the outdoors, welcoming community, livable, connected and safe, and a city that works for you. These were key components, and I'm hopefully all of you participated in the online survey in April, so this will look very familiar to you. The response that we got back, so once again, almost 1,000 responses, 95% said, we agree with the statement, promote the stewardship of the outdoors. We are all responsible for the future of our recreation and natural assets. At 90% was connected and safe. Street and trail networks connect walkers, bicyclists, and drivers of all ages. And 86% said a city that works for you, utilizing city resources to promote a high quality of life. So I'm just going to pause here for a second to share with you like how phenomenal this is. I mean, we don't see a kind of agreement and alignment at greater than 70% most ever in working with communities on their general plans and other plans. So we were so excited when we saw these results to see the true shared importance of these in your community. And then there were some things that the community struggled with a little bit, or there was maybe not quite as clear alignment. And ultimately, I think it came down to word choice. There were a couple of things. One was word choice, and 2 was just definition of what do these words mean? When you use the word growth, what does that mean? When you talk about an authentic past, what does that mean? And just we had to remind people that these weren't our words; these were the words from the community and the input that we received. So we went to the work group and we asked them to help us understand what it is that the community means when they use these words. So Robert will jump into a facilitated discussion of these things in a moment. I'm just going to run through all of them and then I'll stop sharing the screen, Robert. But what do we mean when we talk about growth? And the part of this concept is that Provo has always grown in population and is, will continue to grow in population. And you can't just, shut the door and have no change. We received comments, written comments on the survey of what we should go back to the way it was 20 years ago because it was better then. Sorry, but that's not an option. So I think Robert's going to facilitate a discussion around growth. Another issue that came up is, what does affordable housing mean? And we had a really great discussion about this with the work group. And I think we were really leaning towards and hearing more about attainable housing. And maybe that's a better word to use that represents what it is that you really mean. The fourth area is about history. And I think fundamentally, this came down to a word choice in how we were defining this theme. And I think we've started to bring some resolution to that with the additional input that we received. And then in the general plan, how do we talk about equity, inclusion, and diversity? We heard often, we have a core value today and in the future of being a welcoming community. We are safe, we are inclusive, we are and want to be diverse with kindness and compassion. And the discussion that we've had is, well, what is the role of equity, inclusion, and diversity in the general plan? And maybe it's in the discussion that we had, maybe it's simply that you are saying that it's a value, and maybe that's far enough, and that you don't need to get into the exactly what does that mean, and certainly not how do you do it. So those are kind of the things of where we are today, what we've learned, and kind of hopefully, Robert, teeing you up for a discussion around a couple of topics.
Perfect. Thanks, Becky. Now I would invite the members of the Planning Commission to kind of come off mute, share your video if you have it, because we're really just going to kind of have a discussion and kind of a roundtable type of situation where we can talk about a couple of those things. First, this idea of growth. Becky had a slide up there just a minute ago that talked about, the things that we agree on as far as growth. And just to reiterate, the things that we agree on about growth is that it's likely going to happen. Like, our city is going to grow by a certain percentage. Our valley is going to grow by an even greater percentage. And what is Provo's role in that going to be, and how is that going to be accomplished in the context of a general plan? Like, how do we plan for that? And I just wanted to share a couple things that I heard from the working groups and things like that, and then just open it up to a discussion on how we do this. But one thing that we heard in the working group scenario that I was just really impressed with, Councilmember Harding actually is participating on that, and he said, sometimes growth comes off as a negative connotation, but really growth is kind of what has made Provo the amazing place that it is, and has helped us achieve the quality of life that we have. And like Becky said, if we went back 20 years, would we have that type of quality of life that we actually enjoy right now if it weren't for the growth? And so maybe always thinking about it as a bygone sense is not the best way to do that. But in context of the probability that we're growing is almost 100%. How do we address that in our general plan? And some of the things that we're struggling with is, with growth is some people feel like there's a loss of values that come with that. Some people feel like there's a loss of quality of life. The other real big question is density. We always talk about density. In Planning Commission, you hear density all the time. I'm a proponent that density is simply division. It's just taking the number of units, dividing by the amount of land, and that really doesn't give you a good sense of growth. Rather, it just gives you a number. And what's really important is, what does that density look like? What does that density feel like? And is it manageable? And then there are a lot of differing values on growth. If we just say growth for the sake of growth is good, that's probably not the best thing. But in what context can we talk about growth in the general plan that kind of shares our values, shares our vision for that? And so I just wanted to open it up to a conversation about growth as it relates to the general plan and the planning that we're doing for the future, and kind of get your guys' feedback. So Lori, you're off mute and you're on video. So guess what? I'm calling on you first.
I've actually been thinking about adjectives to pair with growth on and off all day, and I really haven't come up with a good one yet. I'm looking for something that conveys that we're being intentional about our directions, and about building the city and making it more responsive, or continuing to be responsive to the community needs. I also want to talk about that we're managing the growth, and so that we're shaping is a word that might kind of convey that we intend to shape the growth so that it fosters certain values. But it's possible that one of my fellow commissioners will have a better way of saying that. Becky, did you want to say something there? Or no? Okay, I wasn't sure if you raised your hand. So Lisa, Allie, do you have, or Robert is there?
Actually, Lori, I just wanted to follow up on something. I think it's interesting that you're searching for an adjective, because I think that kind of conveys the idea that directing growth is really important to us as a community, right? Like, just having growth out there for the sake of growth isn't necessarily what we want, but we want it directed in the best possible way to maintain that high quality of life that we have. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. And Provo has gotten better over the last, I'd say, 10 to 15 years at doing this by having master plans that are more accessible, the bubbles and those kinds of things that are helpful. So I like the direction that Provo has been taking. I'd like to see it continue and be enhanced.
Perfect. Allie, are you on? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
You can hide behind a blank screen, but you can't hide from your voice.
I'm in the wilderness, so I'm like, maybe better not show what I look like right now.
No, that's okay. What do you think about this conversation on growth? Share with us your thoughts.
I don't know. I think this is obviously a pretty sensitive topic for a lot of people. And when it comes to this idea of shaping the community, it's something that kind of makes me a little fearful as someone in a demographic that often is being shaped out of the community as someone young and single and a renter and on the lower income side of things. Like, when this idea of like who we want in our communities and someone who doesn't necessarily share the values of some groups of people in this town. And so I guess I'm saying, I don't know that I have anything productive to add right now, other than just maybe speaking for other people in my demographic who are young and renters and kind of get a bad rap on the social pages in this city. So
I think you have lots of good things to say, and you just said them. I'm going to follow up on a couple of things like that. Allie, you said And I think you said something to the effect of growth is a little bit concerning to you because you might be mapped out of Provo. Is that kind of what I understood?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I think that the lack of attainable housing, to use the language in the slides, is one way, but there's also that social element of young single renters. I think we're all aware that that was a pretty hot button topic in the last year or two. So
no, that's really understandable. And I think that's an important consideration that we have to think about as we're thinking about growth and making sure that growth is equitable for everybody, right? Like the idea that all of these different diverse groups of people can grow within the city. And that definitely leads into lots of other things that Becky was talking about that are a hot topic within our community. But I think that you bring up some really, really good points. Thanks for sharing that. Lisa, you want to go?
Yeah, I don't have my video on either because I'm laying down. I wanted to ask Allie how you would define that, because I think that most of us on the Planning Commission all agree that what you were saying earlier about what Dave Harding said, that it's the diversity and the growth in Provo that makes Provo as awesome as it is. And I think without that, we don't rub shoulders with all the different people that we get to rub shoulders with. And that's one thing I absolutely love about Provo. So how do we define that type of, the adjectives that you've used: intentional, shaping, managed, equitable, inclusive? How do we define growth in that way where there's room for everyone, and it's not just we give you the leftover land for the undesirable demographic? No, like everybody should get their fair share of Provo. Access to education, to amenities, to recreation and open space, and a diverse stock of housing. So what does that look like in words that aren't so wordy?
That's a really good question, and I wish that I had an answer for you. My thoughts are kind of, and like this is off the cuff and obviously grouping people together that maybe I shouldn't be grouping, but I do feel particularly among maybe the older generation that's used to Provo being a certain way, these young for the young people, I don't think that this idea of higher density is that threatening. A lot of us don't mind apartments and love the idea of community gardens over having a huge yard to ourselves and things like that. So I kind of think that this brings us back to that idea of values, where maybe some of the younger people value that sense of communal living over the traditional acre and a house and a yard and all of that. And again, I'm sure that there are people in both of these camps who wouldn't necessarily fit into those boxes, but I think it's more that people find the idea in general of growth threatening. And so maybe we can find language that isn't as scary, but at the same time, in the end, growth is going to be growth, and it's more of a community attitude problem, or community attitude concern, not necessarily problem, rather than a matter of speaking more fancy about it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wonder, Allie, that makes me think of what if we don't use the word density? I mean, density is a scary word to many people, and they immediately picture something in their mind, whether that's right or not. But what if we talked more about the desired outcome, so that we were saying we need, we want attainable housing, and attainable housing includes the following things, and we never talk about 32 units to the acre.
Sorry, I was having mute issues. Yeah, I think this is more, I don't know how I could reframe that, because to most of my peers, that's not something that needs reframing. So I don't know if I really am the best person to approach that. I mean, maybe it would be a good way in a building bridges exercise, but off the top of my head, I don't know what words would be less threatening, because to me, those are just words that indicate functional design. Like the idea of putting high density next to downtown makes a lot of sense, because that's where our food resources are, and so people can walk around. And I think a lot of my generation would share those sentiments. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Lisa, did you have any other thoughts about, just how we approach this?
I was just thinking that it seems like the barrier to me is trusting that the statistics that say we need a certain housing type, or that a certain housing type is more desirable or not, that's a barrier. And then trusting that the planners who are going to do something, who are going to interpret this general plan throughout the coming years, are going to interpret it with our best interests. Like, it's one thing to say this is what I value, but it's another thing to trust that on paper and on a map, that's going to get followed through in a way that we still agree with, if that makes any sense.
I think it's hard to talk about density as an overall thing, because certain areas will be like around downtown. It makes total sense to me to have that be high density. But there are other parts of the community that are not. And we don't want to imply that we're looking at an average necessarily, but at appropriate densities for the neighborhood that is developing. I think Allie's right that the community has had a student population for a long time that is young adults, but they're kind of a unique population. And in the past, most people have graduated, moved away. And we have this growing community of what when I was younger, they called yuppies, that are coming to live in and settle in our community. And I think that they add an excitement and a dynamism that is wonderful. And I think that those that needs to be embraced. The right words haven't come to me yet, though.
I think that's a really, really good point, Laurie. And I want to make sure that Robert has a chance to speak. But you brought up a really good point of what is actually causing this growth, right? Like, what is actually driving all of this that's happening? And I think that there are several groups in our community that feel like it's an outside phenomenon. Like, there's a lot of in-migration to our community. And there is a considerable amount of in-migration, but the vast majority is really coming from within, right? Like, these are the people that are going to school, and those are our kids, or we were the kids of somebody that was here. And we all have kind of that desire to be close, and there are good jobs. We have a highly educated workforce. So of course we want that to stay, right? And so I think framing this question of growth really a little bit more appropriately in the fact of it's more just the natural increase of having families and having those families stay around, I think often will change the dynamic of how people view growth a little bit. But
that's what I was implying as well, that I think there's a large portion of people who have been here for a long time who don't believe that this demographic that we're talking about, that's a relatively new feature, I guess you would say, is going to stick around. I think there may be people who are afraid that we that we're growing in a way that serves a population that maybe won't be here in the future. And that makes people nervous. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I wonder if that's part of the emotion that gets raised is why are we catering to this? It's just a phase and these people will move on, or, which doesn't really make sense because we cater to the younger demographic that does move on. But because it's new and it's different, people don't know what to think about it.
There's hesitation. Yeah. Robert Knudsen, what do you think?
Well,
And everybody, in case you've forgotten, this is what Robert looks like. We turned the camera around.
well, having lived here all my life, Provo has certainly changed so much. Used to be you went downtown Provo, you knew the merchants, you knew the people who were shopping there. You ran into people you know. I go places in Provo now, there's not a soul that I know. But you got to expect that, it's growth. But I think as older people, I think we tend to fear growth, and I think we tend to fear density. I think we want everybody to live in a small quarter-acre lot with their individual homes, and it scares me in the fact that I don't know that I want to see Provo as a place where there is just high rises full of people. To me, that's really scary, because I guess we were born and raised in an age where all people lived in a little home, or the students rented a basement, or the students had their own growth places or places they lived on campus. But it's really kind of an interesting concept, and having lived here for all these years, to see how Provo has changed. And I assume it will continue to change.
Yeah.
I'm sure we haven't seen the end of the changes that have come to Provo.
Yep, that's why we're going through this whole process, right?
Right.
And to kind of manage that in the best way possible. And I think it's been really interesting in this, short little discussion to kind of see how there really is some concern and a bit of discrimination about the idea of growth, that it is sometimes viewed as this big ominous bubble that it's going to come envelop us, right? And so how do we in the general plan kind of address that? And I liked Lisa's comment specifically about how do we instill trust in the general plan, and that the decision makers that are going to be using the general plan are actually going to use it properly. Lisa, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking Robert Knudsen when he said that we want people to live in a quarter acre with a small house. What do you think drives that expectation? Is it a fear that there'll be too many people using up resources? Is it a fear that that soon all the farms will be gone? Is it the loss of the agricultural feel, or is it just an expectation that maybe is just ingrained in people but unfounded?
I think it's all of what you said. I think it's every bit of that.
Just a little bit of mix.
It's a little of each.
So if you were to be persuaded that growth was good in a managed, intentional way, what sort of wording would help you to wrap your head around that?
You can't expect the Provo's going to say we're going to have 150,000 people and then we're going to stop it.
Right.
That's just not. I mean, you just can't do that. You would like to think that maybe that could happen, but it won't. It can't happen. We want people to come. We want to be a diverse community. We want people to come and to live in our community and to share the good things we have. You do kind of wonder about as the amount of people continue to grow and it gets a bigger city, there will be less farm ground. There will be less agriculture. There will not be any agriculture. I mean, we're already to that point.
Right.
So it's just a fear that I guess we need to overcome. We just need to see that is for our good, really.
Yeah.
Not to hurt us or to stop us, but it's for our growth, it's for our good. It's for the way that we should manage the city.
Cool. I think that's really good comments, and just kind of coming to terms with that however we can. And I think that our general plan can, as we talk about how that growth is going to be directed and strategic, that hopefully that will instill a little bit of alleviate a little bit of fear, instill a little bit of trust.
I like that word strategic. I like that a lot, actually. Strategic growth is a good thing. I do want to point out that we only have about 15 minutes left.
Yep.
So we need to keep moving. But if anybody has another comment on this topic, raise your hand. All right.
Go
Go ahead, Allie.
I actually did just have one thought about this idea that, we don't love the ideas of our agricultural areas disappearing, or our smaller lots and smaller homes, or even our moderately sized homes with moderate lots. And I think I just saw kind of a different perspective here, where in my mind, if we were to build higher density, for example, in the downtown area, that's what provides us with the ability to maintain additional single family homes and agricultural areas, because we don't have to use those lands to parcel them out into quarter acres and build on it. Instead, we can keep a lot of those people in a much smaller footage plan, and then maintain those other areas of lower density. It's a way of facilitating these different types rather than.
I think that's actually a really great segue, Allie, into the thing that we wanted to talk about next, and that was housing affordability, attainable housing, like how we view that as a community. Oftentimes when we put it as affordable housing, that strikes fear and really negative connotations. But really what we're talking about is a housing affordability issue. Like, where are these people going to live and how are they going to afford it? And Allie, I think that your conversation about, strategically putting density where it's appropriate really opens up some other opportunities that we can preserve other areas and things like that. So any thoughts on these particular ideas?
I would say that as I think about attainable housing, affordable housing conveys to me low income housing, where attainable is something that anybody could achieve, whether you're a young professional or whether you're a family, being able to find the right housing. The biggest threat that I feel is people coming from, we want to welcome people, but when they come from higher cost housing markets and think that we're low priced and bid up the price of housing, then that sort of makes the locals, it prices us out of the market. And I think that's the fear that is most common, is that those values will be, it's always nice if you can sell your house for a great deal more than you paid for it, but that also means buying anything is really hard.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And I think it's really interesting that is a perceived fear. However, if you look more, like, even if people are doing that, the value ratio isn't as great as it might have once been. You might be selling your house in California for $800,000, but you're going to be putting the bulk of that into a house here. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, Laurie. Anything else? Lisa, Allie, some things in the chat. Robert, what do you think? Density and affordability. Is it a concern that you have?
No, but it's
Yeah, I always put people on the spot in these meetings. So, well, I think, to be honest, I think that this was a good discussion, and there's nothing wrong with ending a little bit earlier. I did want to mention that I had sent you folks. Oh, Lisa, go ahead.
I just was thinking in answer to your question, now that you gave me a few seconds longer than you gave Robert. I was thinking about affordable housing. And this is maybe where it's my turn to have a chip on my shoulder, but I've always felt like enforcement is one of our missing links that keeps Provo great. We've got a lot of great committees that screen things and rules on the books that help us to have nice, safe neighborhoods. But without the enforcement arm of that, which isn't necessarily a development issue, it's more of the other department issues. But without that enforcement arm in play, then all these great aspects of Provo can disappear very quickly. Does that make sense?
Can you give us an example, Lisa?
Well, I was thinking, like, we're talking about being pushed out of affordable housing as a possibility as people want to come here because it's such a great place and they're willing to pay more than what the rest of us can afford. So even though there's a great housing stock and even a great diverse housing stock, people who are looking for that particular housing stock can afford it at a higher level than the people who are here in Provo trying to move up to the next level of housing maybe. And if you have something that happened recently in my neighborhood was somebody who could afford a second home, bought a second home, and then sneakily turned it into an Airbnb, which on the books is illegal. But if we have these beautiful neighborhoods where people can afford to buy up properties and rent them out for income properties, whether it be just to renters or to vacationers, whatever the case, some are legal, some are not. But the illegal ones contribute to the problem of raising the price of housing because they can afford to buy up properties that people who want to live and make the neighborhoods great wouldn't be able to afford. So that's just one example of where when we turn them into income properties instead of residential only, it also raises those prices of affordability and making housing attainable for everyone.
Yeah, so not only the regulations that we have, but just the mechanisms that we need to put in place to ensure that those houses stay affordable, whether through...
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a pipe dream. I mean, that may be an unrealistic expectation, but that was something I was thinking of as you were talking that contributes to it, that's more on just a planning level.
Understandable. Allie, you have a comment.
I do. And I want to start by saying I just completely agree with what Lisa said. This idea of, like, as soon as we build housing that people can actually use as like an entry level home, when it's snatched up by investors, that it becomes problematic for the community in a lot of different ways. And then this idea of enforcement, again, kind of just made me think of a lot of the times when I personally hear the word enforcement when it comes to housing, it's this idea of like over occupancy of singles in specific housing, which kind of just made me think of like all of this is tied back again to that lack of entry level homes, just because if we want to I know that there are a lot of young adults who would prefer to buy a home over continuing to rent, but because of the lack of availability of that entry-level housing, they're forced to continue renting, which is kind of what causes some of that contention in the communities. So it's interesting to see that a lot of these issues really kind of tie back to that foundational, we want people to be able to afford a home. How can we facilitate that in our community?
Right. And I think that really is just such a crux issue that we're going to be talking about for a long, long time, right? That was one thing that I wanted to reiterate, that the general plan is aspirational and that we're not going to solve all of these problems within the context of a general plan that we're doing this year, right? But the idea of the general plan is to give us good direction, to kind of affirm what our values are as a community, and then make sure that the vision that we're working for kind of aligns with that and gives us good direction over the next 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, and makes us aware of things that we still need to improve upon, right? So I think as we think about the general plan in that context, it kind of makes it more real for us. It makes it more manageable, that it's not something that we have to achieve. It's just, these are our aspirations within the next time frame. I know that time is short, and I had sent out some worksheets that we had shared with the working group. This is really a great opportunity for all of you as the Planning Commission to weigh in with your thoughts and to kind of collect them a little bit on what that vision really should be, on, you know, further kind of wordsmithing, putting things together, making sure that we're on the right track. That's going to be really critical information. So if you have the opportunity to fill that out, you don't have to fill it out on the paper, just put it in an email to me. Like, just send me some of your answers and that would be great. And I can forward it on to Becky and her team.
Okay.
David, you're joining us from Costa Rica. Anything you wanted to add to this conversation?
Just that I'm outside and it's perfect weather.
Well, we're so happy for you that you get to be in Costa Rica and we don't. But that's all I had. Thank you guys so much for everything that you do. Becky, thank you for joining us. Any last thoughts that you wanted to share?
I have one thought that just really quickly, as you had talked about the wording, and probably that goes to the equity, inclusion, and diversity. And I was just going to say that BYU has started talking about diversity and belonging. And I like that belonging word, as that we want to foster a sense of belonging in all groups within our community. So I just wanted to throw out that one concept and then tell everybody else thank you.
That was really great.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate the input. It's really helpful, and love to hear the conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky. We are supposed to be back at 6 o'clock, so that's about 12 minutes.
So, I guess without delaying anything further, welcome to the June 9, 2021 Provo City Planning Commission meeting. I'm going to start by reading a statement relative to the Open and Public Meetings Act. In accordance with Utah's Open and Public Meetings Act, I have determined that conducting meetings of the Provo City Planning Commission with an anchor location, such as the council chambers, presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present there. These are the facts upon which I have made this determination. The World Health Organization has classified novel coronavirus disease as a pandemic. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention state that COVID-19 is easily spread from person to person between people who are in close contact with one another. Utah County is currently listed as having a moderate level of coronavirus transmission as determined by the state's transmission index metrics. Physical distancing measures will be difficult to set up and maintain in the council chambers and other meeting rooms. Therefore, for the next 30 days, all meetings of the Provo City Planning Commission will be conducted entirely via electronic means. Meetings are broadcast live and available later on demand at youtube.com/user/Provo Channel 17 and at facebook.com/Provo Channel 17. Agendas and support materials are available at provo.org/planning commission. To make a public comment or to join a meeting via telephone, follow the instructions provided on public notices of each meeting. To send comments to the Provo City Planning Commission members or weigh in on current issues, email them at dspublichearings@provo.org. Next, we will take roll of the commissioners that are with us here tonight. I believe there are 6 of us all together. I'll ask that commissioners state your name and whether you have any conflicts or not. We'll start with Allie Jones.
Allie Jones, no conflict.
Thank you, Allie. I need to fix my sound here real quick. Okay, great. Next, Lori Urquiaga.
Laurie Urquiaga, no conflicts.
Thank you. Lisa Jensen.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts.
Daniel Gonzalez.
Daniel Gonzalez, no conflicts.
Robert Knutson.
Robert Knudsen, no conflicts.
And I am Dave Anderson. I have no conflicts. Did I miss any commissioners that are with us tonight? Okay, great. I believe we have a total of 6 items on tonight's agenda. Several of them kind of come in 2 parts. In fact, I think we really are looking at just 3 separate projects. We'll go ahead and read in the first 2 together, unless staff has a concern with that and wants to object real quick.
No, that's good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So item number 1, located at 5600 North University. I'm sorry, I need to say that differently. Item number 1, 5600 North University LLC requests concept plan approval for existing buildings to be converted to commercial uses. Subject to the approval of a proposed general commercial zone change located at 5600 North University Avenue. That's item number 1. Item number 2, 5600 North University LLC requests a zone change from manufacturing park to general commercial for approximately 3.8 acres located at 5600 North University Avenue. And we'll turn things over to Mr. Dustin Wright.
Thank you very much. So the property that we're looking at here with these 2 items is outlined in red. It's up on 5600 North and University Avenue. Over here along the west side of the property is the Provo River. As you can see, there's existing structures located on these properties. The 2 properties combined are just under 4 acres of land, and the applicant has a desire to update these structures as far as their appearance and everything, as well as desiring to change the use, and so they're therefore needing the rezone with this property. So changing the zoning from the manufacturing park to the general commercial zone is the request. As far as the concept plan that they've submitted, staff has reviewed that. The existing structure, as you can see on the east side of that structure, it's built right up to the property line. So it doesn't meet the current zoning or the proposed zoning setback. So it's what we'd consider a non-conforming structure, meaning it doesn't conform to the setbacks in the code. This would still be the case whether or not the zone is changed. And so that is, other than that, the proposed plan that the applicant has provided in the concept plan, staff's reviewed that and finds that it will meet the requirements for those zones. Let me kind of jump ahead here and first we'll take a look at the existing zoning map that we have in the city. The property, like I said, is the MP zone. It's adjacent to open space. So the trail along the east side is open space parks zone. There's agricultural zoning and research and business park to the west. The general plan for the property calls for a commercial designation. And so the proposed rezone request would help bring that into alignment with the general plan. Currently, the manufacturing zone there doesn't comply or conform with the general plan map. So this will be an improvement to help bring those two into alignment. Surrounding uses, as you can see, are mixed use, residential, and agriculture on the general plan. Here's a site plan that the applicant has provided as part of the concept plan, showing how they would develop the property if it were rezoned. Again, the existing buildings will stay. They have gone ahead and gotten design review committee to review the facade improvements that they're doing, but they're not adding additional square footage or anything to the exterior to the site. They'll just be improving those facades, and the buildings will stay in their locations. The site will see improvements with landscaping and new parking alignments and parking. One thing to note on the concept plan out by 5600 North, they've shown some future pad sites that could be developed. Those sites aren't necessarily going to move forward at this time. They're just kind of shown there as of what could go there in the future. And so in the staff report, I've put a condition that just kind of outlines that although these are shown here, they aren't being approved at this time. Again, a project plan after approval of all these applications would have to come forth as well. So that's another thing to remember. The property line that exists here on the north side, it ends where this green open space ends, and then it goes into Orem City. So the applicant has had to reach out to Orem City to make sure that they're okay with the parking that's going to be located on the portion here in Orem, and they've gotten approval from them for this. The other thing that applicant has been working on is outside their property. There's an area that they've had to work with Utah County, which is the property owner. In between their property line and University Avenue, there's a section of land that Utah County owns. And so they've been working with them to get an agreement or a purchase of that property in exchange for improvements of the trail corridor and maintenance of that. And so that would extend from their property and I believe go up onto the Orem piece that they also own. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so there's another thing that we want to make sure with this parking lot that's partially in Orem, that parking lot would be dedicated for this site. And so as part of that, the applicant has been working on a development agreement that would get recorded with the property that would basically say that parking there is dedicated for this site and not for a future development on that adjoining property. And then as far as the rezone goes, staff has reviewed that and finds that it will be a good use to help bring new life up to this northern entrance into the city. It's kind of a gateway into Provo, and it's also, if you're coming from Provo, it's a gateway as you go into the canyon as well. So this will allow for some improvements to be made along this area, in an area that's kind of been aging and vacant for some time. Staff also finds that there'll be improvements to the trail and improvements along 5600 North. The sidewalk will be installed, which will help improve the connection over to the Provo River. So those are both some important things that will be benefits from this, which are also listed in our general plan goals and policies, that they are able to help meet some of those by improving pedestrian environment, by improving these trails and sidewalk connectivity to the Provo River, that they're creating neighborhood gathering places and an entrance into the city, like I mentioned. They'll be improving access to recreational amenities with the river and the canyon. And they'll be revitalizing a blighted or distressed area in the city. So staff feels that these goals and policies in the general plan will be better attained by having this done, and recommends approval. With the recommendation for approval for item 1 for the concept plan, staff has a few conditions. The first one is that the rezone is approved by the city council. The second one is that the easement or transfer of property from Utah County that I was talking about is finalized, and that the access and improvements along University Avenue, or for the access and the improvements along University Avenue frontage. And the third was just regarding those future pad sites that I mentioned, that those pad sites are for illustrative purposes on this plan, and will be subject to project plan approval in the future. On item number 2, staff's condition is that the development agreement for that parking lot, that's recorded, ensures that the required parking for this location located on the adjacent parcel is dedicated for this site and this development. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on either of these items.
Dustin, that road goes along the east side. Is it only going to be used as access to the parking lot? Okay.
So Robert was asking about the road on the east side here. So that will be a drive aisle to get back to the parking on the north side of the property.
Will just be used exclusively for that purpose.
Yeah.
Now, where was the Provo River Trail?
So adjacent to that, you see there's the trees in between that drive, and then the trail will be right along there. So it will connect into the southern and the northern portions of that trail.
Okay. So right now that's all one large asphalt area.
Yeah.
And so it kind of separates out the drive aisle from the pathway.
Could I make a comment on that? On our last review that just barely happened, Public Works made a comment on that drive aisle that we would not support that location. I don't know if that's getting into the weeds here for a zone change, but prior to that, they had the drive aisle going between the buildings. The access that they show on that site plan gets too close to University Avenue. and would conflict with the signal when it goes in. And so all of that room would be needed for deceleration lanes and other features on University Avenue. So I don't think that changes our support of the zone change. It just changes support of the site plan as drawn.
Dave, just so I understand, are you or Public Works concerned about both the location of the drive aisle to get access to the parking lot that's north of the building and the location of the entrance to 5600 North, the easternmost one? Or is it just the entrance to 5600 North that's a concern?
It would be both. What has been talked about in the past is continuing that Parkway Trail along that old railroad right-of-way that was dedicated to whatever jurisdiction had that property within their boundaries at the time. So that dedication or conveyance of property was pretty specific in that it had to be used for public purposes, and we don't see a private driveway as being a public purpose.
This is Suzanne from 5600 North University LLC. And if I may answer Mr. Day's concerns.
I think we're gonna maybe hold off on that for a few more minutes, and then we'll turn some time over to you. I appreciate you letting us know that you're ready. I guess, Dave, as I understand it, that's been used, in conjunction with previous uses on the property for quite some time for kind of the same purpose, right? As a drive aisle of some type. I'm not that familiar with the property, but just from the aerial, it looks like.
Yeah, and so part of that is currently held by Provo City, and the other part was supposed to be held by Provo City according to the agreement, but I think there's some question as to whether that north part is Utah County or Provo City. It's just that when they map those things, they don't get mapped according to the deeds sometimes, but all of that can be worked out in a project plan approval. I just don't want you to feel like what you're seeing may not be the final configuration.
And I guess just inherently, the location of the access there that close to what's going to be a signalized intersection, that for me, that's really easy for me to get my head around and why that would be a concern. I'm struggling more with the other part of it.
And that would be a UDOT design, but that would be a pretty significant feature to this site, given projected traffic volumes. So that signal will be definitely needed in the future.
That you're aware of what we're seeing now on the screen, or maybe for Dustin or anybody else, those are the current property lines, what's outlined in red?
Correct.
Okay. Maybe one last question from me before we turn things over to the rest of the commission. And this is more just a matter of curiosity for me, I think, than anything, but the zoning in Orem surrounding the property, Dustin, do you know what that is?
I don't know what they have that zoned as right now.
Okay. We'll go ahead and turn things over to the commission. Any questions of staff? We'll start with Commissioner Jensen.
So I have 5 questions. The first one is, are there any restrictions on how a non-conforming structure can be modified, Mr. Wright?
In what regard are you?
I'm just making sure that this is, I guess, to assess whether the zone change is necessary. The first one of the questions I want to find out is does it matter what they do to these non-conforming structures, or if you change the use of a non-conforming structure, is it then even more? Does it matter? I guess.
Yeah, it's not a non-conforming use. It's just a non-conforming structure. So they wouldn't be able to expand the non-conformity. So the non-conformity is that it's too close to the front property line. So they wouldn't be able to come in and do an addition in the future that would create more structure that
Just
close.
Change the footprint of the building.
They could, as long as it met the current setback requirements of either the zone that it's in, or if it gets rezoned to meet that new zone.
If they added onto it, would all of the setback requirements then be enforced? So they would have to change some of the borders of the building, or, you know what I'm saying? Because it's still non-conforming. So how do you say it's meeting it and non-conforming simultaneously?
They could add to the building as long as they're not increasing the non-conformity. So the addition would have to meet that setback that Mr. Wright is referring to.
Okay, thank you. The second one is, does the proposed parking lot and that connecting road, which may or may not be okay with engineering, comply with the setback requirements even though the building doesn't? It seems like that is in violation of the setback as well, is it not?
No, the parking lot has been set back to meet that setback along the front there. So it would be in conformance with today's code.
What about that section that branches off to the right with the road that's in question? Does that have a setback requirement for that access road?
The access road itself, or?
Yes.
Well, if they acquire the property, then that would help bring it into conformance. The drive aisle, I don't think is an issue. It's not
just the parking lot.
Not
okay.
Used for parking. It's just access to parking, so that would be okay.
Okay, I loved Dave Anderson. I love your question about what the zone is in Orem. That would be something maybe that matters. I don't know. But has a property agreement like this been done across property lines in other parts of the city? I've never heard of a project like this. So how does...
I haven't had one. We did get a letter from Orem City that they're okay, that they've reviewed this site plan, that they're okay with it. They're not concerned with it, and then if in the future when they develop on their property, they do the equivalent of a project plan or whatever Orem City has for their review process. So
okay. Is commercial allowed at all in the MF zone?
The MP zone?
MP, thank you. Can't read my own writing.
Not retail commercial like what the applicant is looking to put there. So for the use that they want, the current zone doesn't allow for that, and so that's why they need the rezone.
Does the zone change give them any other advantages besides just making the use compatible?
It brings it into alignment with the general plan. It has whatever uses would be permitted in that zone, but I don't know if it creates any other benefits other than making it make it work for what they're looking to do.
Okay, thank you. I love the idea of revitalizing this area, so I was just asking all those questions so we understand, at least so I understand what the issues are. Thank you.
I believe the zoning in Orem north of this is either some type of professional office or some type of business park. The property directly north of this in Orem is still vacant, but north and to the west, there's an office building there. I believe
Mr.
currently
Pepperoni?
the zoning of the vacant piece is the same as the office building that's to the north and west.
Daniel Gonzalez has confirmed your belief. It is, he says that it's BP. So business professional, I imagine that means commercial. It says commercial allowing use of research, development, and training. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to Commissioner Urquiaga.
Thank you. I understand the concern with the driveway. We're making this approval on the expectation that that property will transfer because it isn't currently owned by the applicant. That's correct?
Which property?
The driveway.
Correct. Yeah, they're working that out, I believe, with Utah Counties, who I thought was the owner, but maybe David Day has more information on that.
I realize you want, this is
Yeah,
5600 LC again. I know you want me to wait till the end, but I can save you all a lot of trouble. I received the recorded deed from Utah County on that property yesterday. So they have actually already deeded that to me. The property, including the bike path starting parallel with the building going east to west, is owned by Utah County. So that piece of property and the bike path, the Provo River Parkway, owned by Utah County, we have made that exchange. So I have the deed right now that's been recorded with Utah County for the driveway, and the purpose of the bicycle path and the driveway and the landscaping, and you can't see it, but if you saw the whole landscaping plan, you would see that there are big boulders and trees to protect bikers from cars, as well as making it wide enough so that you can have 2 drive-throughs. And it's really a much safer alternative to anything else that we could come up with in terms of, having cars move around these buildings. So just to make it really easy for you, the property's already been deeded and Utah County has approved that. So I will mute myself and let you all go on, but I thought that might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I think
Lori.
resolves my question.
Yeah.
So-
While we're into it, David, if I can maybe just a couple of pointed questions to start with. You mentioned something about the need for a future deceleration lane. The image that we're looking at here seems to show a deceleration lane. Do you anticipate that there need to be additional right-of-way dedicated for future road improvements with this, or otherwise does the applicants owning that property change, do you think, Public Works thoughts about the site design?
Yeah, so that has yet to be determined. But the thing that I do know for sure is you'll see that parcel highlighted in black that protrudes up into that drive aisle. That is Provo City property. And from what I've heard from the staff with Parks and Public Works, we would not be willing to part with that property. So that would create a problem there. But like I said, this is a site plan type discussion. I think what we're talking about here is a zone change, and I think we're fully in support of the zone change. It's just that this current configuration, we made comments on this plan indicating the things that I've told. It's just that it came in, I think, a week or two ago, and that may have not got back to everyone yet, but I think we can work all the site issues out. It's just right now we're not in support of this current configuration.
Okay, David, thank you. I appreciate that. Lori, I apologize for interrupting a minute ago. Do you want to take the floor?
Thank you, but no, my question was answered.
Okay, thank you. I guess I have a couple of thoughts, but maybe before that, are there any other commissioners that have questions of staff? I don't see any hands raised, and I think I'm going to hold my questions maybe until after we've heard more from the applicant. And I apologize that I didn't catch the name of whoever's representing the applicant tonight, but we'll go ahead and turn time over to them to add anything to what staff has presented.
My name is Suzanne, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add just about the project or?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. So we have met with UDOT. We've met with Provo City. We've met with Utah County. We've met with Orem City. We've gone around and around on this thing for over a year, maybe a year and a half. And we've worked pretty hard to get it to where it is supposedly acceptable. But I guess Mr. Day thinks that this little corner here is somehow not deemed, I don't know, shouldn't be a part of this thing. You know, in exchange for this piece of property, I am spending a significant amount of money improving the bike path, landscaping, repaving, making sure that the grades and the water runoff are correct, and irrigating it. So I would be maintaining that entire path myself. Not only the construction of it, but the ongoing maintenance of that path. So Mr. Day, are you saying you don't want me to do that section there? Because I don't know if you've seen it lately. Maybe you could pull up the Google Earth image and you should have a look at what it looks like right now. Because I'm not trying to steal anything from anybody or not change anything. But if you want that to look like that, okay, that's all right. That's your choice. But I feel like what I'm offering the city is the opportunity to have a completely beautiful site plan with curb and gutter along 5600, the deceleration lane on University Avenue. What happens at 5600 as it comes into University Avenue is a widening of the lanes per UDOT. So we have a left turn lane, a straight or right, and then we have the lane coming in from the southbound traffic off of University Avenue. I think it's going to be beautiful. My whole point here is to create something gorgeous, a place for people to go, for industry, for commerce to thrive. And let's bring the tax dollars to Provo so everybody doesn't go to Orem to shop. And let's have restaurants and gyms and all kinds of things that create tax base. And, you know, if you want to hold back and hold this little tiny piece of bike path and, you know, stop me from having, I don't know, 25 feet of driveway, go ahead. I mean, you know, it's up to you, but really you hold the keys to having this project work or not, because the option of having the cars drive between the buildings, we've done some safety studies and those come back that is a very bad idea, that people would be hit coming out from behind one building or another with cars going through there. And what we've come up with is what we think of as the safest and most beautiful way to approach this site plan. And I'm putting in new storm drains, the site plan upgrades, new asphalt parking lot, lighting, more security. And when you talk about revitalizing a blighted area, just so you know, I am in constant battle with drug users, drug abusers, people dumping on the property, people stealing things from the property. I mean, it is a nightmare to have this thing in the condition that it's in. And I've been in contact with the Provo police at least 25 times since I bought this property. And I don't think that anybody, unless they are in the situation that I am in or in the police department, understands what a risk to the safety of Provo. We have homeless people living on the river. We've got a really big problem. I'm trying to spend the money and put something beautiful there, which would give it total vitalization and really make it something great. I would provide security, I would provide cameras, and to have livelihood instead of this half-dead, ugly part of town, we would have a destination. that would be safe, well lit, and occupied. I'll leave it to that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, I have a few. I'm going to jump in first, and then we'll see who else might want to add. In terms of the different types of businesses, potential tenants, and that type of thing that you see locating here, what do you have in mind?
Well, I get calls, probably 2 or 3 calls a day. What we're hoping for is a really nice restaurant on the east end there by the parking lot. If you want to go back to the site plan that I have submitted, you'll see that there's a patio on the north end of the east building. And the idea is that that would be a restaurant. I'm in talks with people. Unfortunately, I can't really negotiate or talk price with anybody until I pass not only the Planning Commission, but City Council. The idea is to have a restaurant. We have a sporting goods store that wants to come in there, a nail salon, a hair salon, a gym, a bike rental, a potential candy store that's quite well known in town for the East Building, where they would have ice cream, candy, all that stuff, and they would be making it on the premises possibly, if that works. Additionally, we've left a lot of green space because we want to be able to have family movie night where people could get restaurant food delivered to their seats on the lawn. You know, we would love for this to be a location where maybe we had art shows on the weekends and, you know, live music on the lawn, just some really destination specific venues, if you will. Does that answer your question?
Boy, that does. Thank you. Sorry, it took me a second to unmute myself there. That's really helpful. I appreciate that. That's kind of what I expected you to say. And, you know, maybe this echoes what Commissioner Jensen said earlier. It certainly seems to me like it's been an underutilized property, and that this does seem like a really, really good opportunity to change that and change it in a significant way. I'm not at all going to speak for any of my colleagues, but relative to the way in which the property to the north is accessed for what I think clearly would be needed parking for the types of uses that you just described, I'd hate for us to get much deeper into those weeds now. I will say that I'm comfortable with this layout, and if there was a way for Provo City to be able to work with the property owner here to be able to utilize a small part of that, you know, for a portion of that driveway, I think from what I'm seeing here, that probably would be the best way to make use of the property, in my opinion. And, you know, other than that, unless, again, one of the other commissioners really wants to get into that, I'd probably be inclined to leave that up to the applicant and staff to work out between now and when they submit for project plan approval. But nonetheless, commissioners, does anyone have any other questions for the applicant? I don't see any hands raised at this point. So if staff can help us go into public hearing now, let's do that.
There are no public comments at the time. 30 seconds.
Sorry, quick question. If we can, if I'm wrong on the time, let me know. Mr. Anderson, what, because I didn't get any comments when we submitted the plans to Provo City for this meeting. So when Mr. Day comes and he has an objection to Provo cooperating with the use of that, where do we go from here? What happens? Do you take a vote on it tonight, or is there some hurdle that I'm going to have to jump over, or how does this work?
I'm going to let either Mr. Wright or Mr. Pepperoni leave where I'm going to stop here, but the approval process is incremental, and we can make recommendations on some key parts tonight. But ultimately, there is another step that you'd have to go through. So at least as I envision it, you can take this whole discussion for what it will be worth when we're done tonight and work with staff to put together essentially the final plan that would come back to the Planning Commission for approval at a future date. And staff, do you guys have anything to add to that?
No, that's correct, Suzanne. If the Planning Commission, whatever their recommendation is on the zone change, it'll go forward to City Council. If the recommendation is positive and the Planning Commission, while it's going to City Council, I hope that you will be able to meet with staff and we'll be able to work out site plan issues so that when you draw up the project plan, it will be drawn in a way that the staff will support, and that'll come back to Planning Commission for approval.
I appreciate that input, Mr. Pepperoni. Thank you.
No public comments.
Are we comfortable closing the public hearing now then? No more 30 seconds.
Yes.
Great. So we will close the public hearing then for, I don't know if it's both items 1 and 2, but we'll consider it that way. And we'll turn the discussion back to the commission. Commissioner Urquiaga.
Thank you. I just want to say that this is something of a blighted area at the moment. And so I really like this plan. I think that it shows potential to be a really nice property, and especially with the tenants described by the applicant. That seems like a really good addition to this part of University Avenue. Together with you, I am not bothered very much by the configuration of the road at the moment. And so I would encourage city and the applicant to work through whatever issues there are. It seems to me that if the entrance and exit that's so close to the intersection there were closed or moved, that would answer most of the concerns. But I'm not an engineer, so I'm just saying that as a lay person, it seems reasonable to me, and I like this project. Like it a lot. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Jensen.
So the only question I had maybe to raise with just our commission discussion is there's a setback from the river for a reason. I don't know why the building was built so close to the river the first time around, but is it a good idea to allow improvements to a property that has a known risk of flooding? Do we take any responsibility for that decision if we approve something?
Well, the building was built before there was the setback from the river, so that would be non-conforming. And to continue to use the same building, even for different uses, if it's using the same building and the same footprint, that's where those non-conforming rights come into play.
So it's just a liability that the owner takes on by choosing to build there?
That's right.
Or to use it? Okay.
That's right. But the engineering department would also tell you that there's been enough work done to the river that 100-foot setback has much less relevance today than it had back in 1984 or 85 when they adopted that.
Okay, thank you.
What we're seeing hatched on that plan there, that is just a setback from the river, and that's not floodplain.
Correct. Yeah, that would just be the 100-foot setback from the top bank of the river.
Okay. Thanks. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Yeah, as I said earlier, I think this property is very underutilized. Just again, to echo what has already been said, I love the idea of there being more opportunities for retail uses. Man, just even the thought of having something like that right on the border of Orem, where some dollars might stop at the Provo city boundary with Orem and actually get spent in Provo instead of Orem. That's like, I mean, this is almost a tearjerker kind of a moment. So big fan of the concept and the opportunity to execute here for sure. Commissioner Jensen?
So I'm inclined, whenever you're ready, to say that maybe the solution, since we all agree we like the project and there's really just the question that engineering brought up that's holding us back, that maybe if we just added a condition of the east access being modified and approved by Provo City Engineering and UDOT before anything can progress. That's kind of a given, but if we added that as a condition for approval for item 1, that feels like it would alleviate my concerns.
I appreciate that. I think that's appropriate. I probably would be more comfortable with the phraseology being maybe just a little bit more broad and saying staff, in general versus, just referring to one city department like engineering, with the hope that engineering and community development and everybody could get on the same page and work with the applicant to bring something back. Small thing, but I do appreciate the concept there. And I believe we're ready for motions on both item 1 and 2 based on the lack of hands that we're seeing here. So if anybody is inclined to jump in.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Please.
Okay. I move that we approve the requested concept plan approval for existing buildings at approximately 5600 North University Avenue to be converted to commercial uses, subject to the approval of the general commercial zone change. So with the condition that the rezoning is approved by the city council, obviously, that the easement or transfer of property is finalized, which may or may not be complete, and that the future pad sites are just for illustrative purposes and will be subject to project plan approval in the future, and that the east access be modified and approved by any concerned parties.
Okay, wonderful. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay, that was Commissioner Lisa Jensen with the motion and Commissioner Urquiaga seconding the motion. And the motion is to approve the proposed concept plan based on the following. There were 4 conditions that she listed, the 3 in the staff report and the 1 additional one. I'm not going to restate those unless somebody specifically asked me to. And any discussion on that motion? Once again, I don't see hands, so back to what might be the usual order here. We'll start with a vote with Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Urquiaga?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Knutson?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimous, 6-0. The motion carries. Moving on to item number 2. I believe we're ready for a motion on that. If not, somebody can jump in. If we are, somebody can jump in as well. Commissioner Urquiaga.
I'm happy to make a motion. I move that we forward a positive recommendation on item number 2, 5600 North University LLC requests a zone change from manufacturing park to general commercial for approximately 3.8 acres located at 5600 North University Avenue to the municipal council.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. That was Commissioner Urquiaga with the motion and Commissioner Knutson seconding the motion. Motion to recommend approval of item number 2. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Jensen.
Do we need to list that first condition, or did that already get answered? In the staff report, it says a development agreement is recorded that ensures that the required property that is located on the adjacent property is dedicated for this site.
I think that is up to Commissioner Urquiaga.
I'd be happy to amend the motion to include the condition in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Knudsen. Would you be comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So with the addition of the recommended condition that's provided in the staff report relative to there being a development agreement recorded, we have an amended motion and second. So the motion now is to approve item number 2 with that one condition. And do we have any additional discussion on the motion?
Just that we're recommending it for approval. We're not actually approving it.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's what
I did
was
miss.
gonna say.
That was my mistake. I apologize. Yes, recommendation to approve item number 2.
I think we're good.
Super. So, Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Urquiaga,
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen,
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So on item number 2, it is 6-0 unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you. This is, for me, an exciting project to see. I'm really looking forward to just seeing how it all comes together, hopefully sooner than later. And we'll move on to items 3 and 4. I'll read them both in together. Item number 3, Sidney Allsop requests concept plan approval for 15 townhome units located at 690 East, 500 South in a proposed medium density residential zone. That's item number 3. Item number 4, Sidney Allsop requests a zone change for approximately 0.8 acres from residential conservation to medium density residential for a townhome development located at 690 East, 500 South. And we will go ahead and turn the time over to Mr. Larson.
Thank you. All right. Glad to be here with you, Planning Commission, and I just want to give you some visuals here to kind of get us honed in on the property. So again, 690 East, 500 South, half block north of the Provo City Cemetery. The subject property is approximately 0.8 acres and in an area of mixed uses. So first I'll show you kind of the general plan and major neighborhood plan designations for this property. The neighborhood or the subject property. Well, first of all, I'll say this is the general plan map. I don't know if you can see my cursor. You can see that the general plan designation for this property is residential. As for the Mazer neighborhood plan, the designation there is single family residential. One thing that staff noticed when they were processing this application is in relation to the single family residential designation, I noticed the plan doesn't differentiate or qualify, single family residential. Provo City Code has we consider single family or one family residential. Well, let me say it this way. You can have single family attached and single family detached. Detached, of course, traditional single family home. An attached single family dwelling would be like a townhome. So next here is a map of the kind of the zoning in the vicinity, and you can see subject property. It's in the RC zone, and so are the properties to the east and west. To the south, you've got some general commercial zoning along with some open space zoning a little further. Just a big mix of zoning in this area. You've got some R16A accessory, so 6,000 square foot lots, single family lots with the ability to have an accessory unit to the north and in a manufacturing or industrial area to the west. This is the Tannerack development that was approved in the last couple of years. Number of apartments, I think it was in the neighborhood of 64. So quite a mix of uses in the area. So you've got a lot of attached housing. I think this is Provo Housing Authority owns this property. You've got a Wasatch Behavioral Health Facility right there. And then you've got some type of like mechanic shop there and a few other commercial uses, and then a lot of residential uses. Some of these, you've got some attached housing there. A number of the houses though are one family detached. This is a fourplex right there. So it is kind of a mix of residential housing. So the proposal here, as far as zoning goes, is they're asking for medium density residential. Originally, they asked for high density residential, and I think that was mainly due to maybe a bit of a misunderstanding of what high density residential means in Provo City. When we talked to them and suggested that maybe they consider an MDR, they were satisfied with that when they realized that it could facilitate their development and maybe not open the door so much to high density development on the property. So the reason why they want this zoning is because they are proposing a 15-unit townhome. The density on the property would be 23 units per acre. That's on the net. Gross would be 18 units. Gross is more important in this zone as far as the code goes. There's no established requirement for net density, but there is for gross. The max gross on this in this zone, in the MDR zone, is 30 units per acre there at 18, so quite a bit under the max there. Sufficient parking, lot coverage is right in line with, or it's less than the max. They're probably somewhere in the 39 to 40% range. The reason I'm not 100% sure on the exact number is originally, and I can show you here, they originally proposed 16 units, and they decided to drop that unit. So the lot coverage went down from 42 to probably about 39%. So they're proposing a private internal driveway to access the lots. Each of these units would have their own garage, a 2-car garage. There'd be 5 additional parking spaces in this area. And again, I'd note this is conceptual. They're just giving us an idea of what they will do with this property. But they've given us a good amount of information to help us understand what they're proposing to do on the property if the rezone's approved. Some of that information they've provided is conceptual elevations. So I don't know if you can see that, but you've got rear loaded and then front loaded. So rear loaded units, the garage is on the back, obviously, and you can see the front entrance there. The reason for the differentiation, so there's some design standards at play here that we wanted to make them aware of prior to getting into the project plan stage. One of those would be that their units have to face, units have to face on the road if they're up against a street. So they've got those units would be the situation like you just saw. The garage would be in the back, and you'd have an elevation like we just saw right here along 500 West. Well, on the south. So on the western side here, there's another development standard that kicks in and says you can't have your units facing, the front can't face an interior property line. So then they came back and came with another elevation for that western row of townhomes. And you can see they've got a front entrance next to the garage. So that's that. As far as floor plan, pretty traditional for a townhome, 3-bedroom units, and so I believe that's it. So staff feels like this is a good project for the area. This is an area that's a little older, mix of uses, but there is a lot of residential use in the area, and staff would also note there's a lot of area back here. Maybe I'll go back to it. There's a lot of land through here that's got large backyards on these properties. So there's a lot of land that maybe could be more utilized perhaps. And so this proposal provides 15 new attached single-family homes. I think it helps revitalize this area. It'll contribute to that at least. And with this project Tannerack to the northeast, I think it's going to bring some good revitalization to the area. I don't know. I got a late comment from the public and one or two from off Open City Hall that I thought I should make you aware of. I think this comment actually, there was a comment from a Kathleen Dameron, and I believe you got that one. Commissioner Knudsen's letting us know he's seen it, but she was making she had some questions about what the result of the taxes on the adjacent properties would be in relation to this proposal. And I'm not a tax expert, but I do know that it certainly will help new units in the area. I think will help to bring property tax. Will help to improve the value of the area. She also asked about police patrols and services in the area. You know, it's fairly close to. This isn't too far removed from the police headquarters downtown. It's just a couple of blocks from the fire station on 3rd South. She also she wanted to know what kind of impact it would have on the schools. I didn't reach out to the school district on this one. We kind of consider this more of a this is on the smaller scale of developments, I would say. But I will note that housing stock like this is likely to contribute, or it's going to likely attract maybe a younger group of people, younger families. Median household size in Provo in 2019 was 3.17. So I don't think it's 15 additional units with a median household size of 3.17 is going to add a ton of students to the school. We had another comment from a person who was just kind of noting the drought and the concern for water resources and all the development that's happening in Provo, and asked us to be judicious. Another person said they were opposed to the proposal, saying that I think they may have been a bit mistaken on the intent of the residential conservation zone, but saying that he said if changing a conservation zone becomes as simple as purchasing a property and applying for a zoning change, then the hard work of creating zoning laws and sought after protections become meaningless. So I think staff kind of looks at the residential conservation zone as kind of, it does conserve residential property, but it's also a holding zone. And this is, I think, enhancing the residential, would enhance the residential nature of this property. So we'd definitely be in favor of the proposed rezone and concept plan. The rezone, I would say we are definitely, definitely in favor of it if the applicant can demonstrate a sincere intent to only construct single-family homes on the property. So that's our only concern. We just want to make sure that it truly is utilized for the future land use set forth in the Mazer neighborhood plan, and that'd be single-family homes. So with that, we'd recommend approval of both applications.
Mr. Larson, thank you. We'll start with Commissioner Urquiaga.
Thank you. First question, does this zone require amenities? And am I seeing something of that in the plan or no?
No, this, once you get to 20 units, that's the trigger for amenities. So there is no proposed amenities with this development.
Okay.
And none would be required.
And there is no way to legally restrict the use of single family homes for rental or other, I mean, if these were to be acquired as investments, there's nothing that could be done to block that, is there?
No, not that I'm aware of. That's the concern with rezoning into the MDR zone, is it kind of opens the door up to the other uses that are residential in nature, apartments, multifamily units, like fourplexes. Those are the other types of twin homes, I guess, are another type of use. But you can have apartments and multifamily units up to 30, up to a density of 30 units per acre in that MDR zone.
Okay, but if we are approving that zone in light of this concept plan, then those are not options at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the proposal, they've given us a concept plan that gives us an idea of what they plan to do, but I don't think there's anything that's been, I don't think they have anything concrete that's going to say it's going to be absolutely what they're proposing.
Well, I think you're discussing two different issues. No, there's nothing that allows us to say this has to be owner occupied or can't be rented. But the site plan you're seeing on the screen itself, that site plan is a proffer to the city of what they intend to build. It is completely appropriate for the city planning department to say, okay, well, since you've proffered that plan, we would like that put into a development agreement. And so that we all know that this is really what you intend to build. So that would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jensen.
So, Mr. Pepperoni, is that something that I seem to remember from our last meeting, that we can't ask them for a development agreement? They have to offer one, right? It has to be.
That's correct. Mr. Pepperoni stepped aside for just a second. That's correct.
And I think, like last time, where even though the developer intends to do one thing, if the property changes hands, that development agreement has no hold anymore on whoever does something next, or does it stay with the property?
Development agreements are recorded at the county and they do run with the land.
Okay, awesome. So the condition that is recommended by the staff, that the applicant provide some sort of assurance that the zoning will be used for single family residential, would be covered by that regardless, if they offered that.
If they offered that, correct.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other hands. I'm going to jump in real quick and we can circle back with anybody else. I'm just going to mention this now before we turn time over to the applicant in case they want to express any concerns. But two things for me on the concept plan, and I guess they're kind of connected. This is just me, but see a lot of townhomes these days, and for whatever reason, see a lot of townhomes that end up having side elevations fronting public streets. And I really would like to see, like, meaning I think it's a really big deal to have those side elevations that face public streets be modified to where there are man doors, front doors to units on those sides, and otherwise just have those sides modified to where it looks like the front of a building and not the side.
That's required by our design standards.
Is it? Okay. Got it. So what we're seeing here isn't necessarily what they'd be able to build, at least on that street facing side.
Correct.
Okay. That's easy. Great. The other one, there might be a setback issue with this. This might get some pushback. This might have already been thought about, but the parking area that's on the south, I want to say the southeast east side, and really the only place where there is any of the 90-degree parking in. I'd love to see those two buildings that are next to that, the buildings that are just west of that, flopped, if you will, so that the parking is more interior to the project, and so that the building is out next to 7th East, with the idea that that's going to be a good looking elevation next to the street, and got kind of the parking then tucked more to the interior of the project. If there's a way that can happen, I think that's an improvement.
Staff was going to ask for that at the project plan stage. We agree with you.
Another easy one, maybe. Perfect. That's all that I had. I don't see any other hands relative to maybe questions for staff. So let's go ahead and turn the time over to the applicant to add anything that they'd like to what staff's presented.
Yeah, I appreciate the time to go through this project in hearing tonight. And we're happy to go and enter into a development agreement with the city so that we have the divested development rights to have the units that we're showing in the MDR zone, but also give the city assurance that we're going to do what we say we're going to do in the concept plan. As we get through our platting, it's going to be very, very similar to what you see right now, pending any sort of changes that the city may require. We want to make sure that it looks like this for a couple of reasons. One is this is what we've shown you. This is what the public's looked at. But additionally, I've got most of the plat already done, so I'd like to keep it that way. So what you see is essentially what you're going to get. And based on the conceptual elevations, yeah, we can make changes so that it meets city requirements or what is aesthetically pleasing for the area.
Wonderful, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? I don't see any, so let's go right into the public hearing then.
Public comments, 30 seconds.
And while we're waiting here, I do appreciate Mr. Larson going through the comments that we've received via the other types of media. We acknowledge those and appreciate that input.
Brandon, can you change it to the public comment screen?
Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so another 30 seconds. No public comments.
Okay, thank you. We will close the public hearing then and turn the discussion back to the commission. Again, considering both items 3 and 4 now, whenever we're ready, be 2 separate motions, one on the concept plan for approval, the other making a recommendation on the zone change. Commissioner Urquiaga.
Yes, I would like to second your recommendation that the site of the parking be moved a little bit to the west and swapped with those 2 units, if that is possible. I agree with you that that would be more aesthetically pleasing. It's hard to know just eyeballing it whether or not that would work, but it kind of looks like it should. But with that said, I'm prepared to make a motion.
We'll see if Commissioner Jensen has anything to add before we entertain a motion.
I just wanted to give my comments about it. I looked on Google Earth. I took myself on a little tour of the neighborhood, and I feel like this use is compatible with what's there. The homes are very, very small and not elaborate. So, and I think their smallness probably implies there's an owner occupancy presence. So having, even though these ones will be closer together, they're still encouraging owner occupancy. I feel like the intent of the residential conservation zone, as I've asked a million questions about it before, is really to encourage owner occupancy in neighborhoods and preserve neighborhood feel. And I feel like this still honors that intent, and that it's a good buffer use to the surrounding uses. The uses to the south, the zone to the south is not a single family neighborhood. So even though it feels like it chops up the residential conservation zone, it's doing it adjacent to another zone, and it's at a street boundary. So there's an apartment building to its west and a couple duplex, triplex style apartment buildings across the street. I feel like it's very compatible. That's all.
Okay, thank you. If I don't see any other hands really quickly, then we'll certainly entertain a motion. Commissioner Urquiaga.
Okay. I move that we approve item number 3. Sidney Allsop requests concept plan approval for 15 townhome units located at 690 East, 500 South in a proposed medium density residential zone, with the condition that the zoning be approved and the expectation that the applicant will enter into a development agreement with the city to ensure that these are single family residences as demonstrated in the concept plan.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, that was a motion by Commissioner Urquiaga, seconded by Commissioner Knutson to approve the concept plan, item number 3. Any discussion on the motion, Commissioner Jensen?
I'm just trying to learn from previous mistakes. When we did this at our last meeting, did we attach the condition for the development agreement to the zone change or to the concept plan? It seems like we did it to the zone change.
That's correct.
So do we want to remove that condition maybe and put that on the next item? That would be my suggestion.
Commissioner Urquiaga, do you have any?
I do not object to adjusting the sequence of the condition.
Okay, excellent. And Commissioner Knutson, do you have any concern with that?
No.
Okay, great. So with the amended motion to approve the concept plan, it's item number 3. Any additional discussion on the motion? Okay, great. We will go back then. Top of the list, Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Commissioner Urquiaga.
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Knutson.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. A pattern going here, that's 6-0. The motion carries. We may be ready for a motion on item number 4. I think we are, if anybody's ready to jump in.
I'd be happy to make that motion.
Please do.
I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the municipal council for item number 4, Sidney Allsop requests a zone change for approximately 0.80 acres from residential conservation to medium density residential for a townhome development located at 690 East 500 South, with the expectation that the applicant will enter into a development agreement with the city to commit to creating the kind of housing that is shown in the concept plan.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, once again, Commissioner Urquiaga with a second from Commissioner Knudsen. The motion is to recommend approval of item 4, the proposed zone change, subject to the condition that the applicant enter into a development agreement relative to following through on the design that we saw tonight. Any discussion on the motion? Boy, this feels too easy, but of course I like it. Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Commissioner Urquiaga?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, moving right along. Items 5 and 6. Like the previous 4, they seem to be connected to me. So likewise, I'm going to read them in together. Jason Bennett, this is item 5. Jason Bennett requests concept plan approval for a 69-lot residential subdivision located at approximately 200 North Lakeshore in a proposed R18 zone. Item 6, Jason Bennett requests a zone change from A1.10 and A1.5 to R1.8 for 68 single-family lots, and from A1.5 and A1.10 to the RA zone for 1 lot located at approximately 200 North Lakeshore Drive. Mr. Larson.
Thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to note that the applicant, Jason Bennett, is here. Also, the neighborhood chair for the Fort Utah neighborhood is also present and would like to address the commission when it's appropriate to do so.
Thank you.
So take you to the just to the subject property here. 23.5 acres roughly, close to the intersection of Center Street and Lakeshore Drive. You'll remember that recently the Planning Commission recommended and City Council approved a rezone of R18 PD zone right here, and some industrial zoning, light industrial zoning, just south of that residential area. So we're just around the corner for an R18 rezoning request and proposal for a single family development. So I'll take you to the general plan maps and the general plan map and the Southwest Area Future Land Use map. The general plan is calling for residential use on this property. You can see the agricultural use kind of adjacent to it, but this particular area has been planned for residential use. If you could see that description, which I'm afraid is a little small for reading, unless you've got really good eyes. That's basically telling us that it's really not pinning down the type of residential use, but the Southwest Area Future Land Use map does give us some more direction on the type of residential use. The residential use is also recommended here. If you look at the table here, it appears that this area lines up with the R1 zoning. It appears to be R1. They appear to be recommending R1 zoning on this property, and the Southwest Area Future Land Use map, in concert with the general plan, calls for 4 acres. It calls for density of 4 acres net. 4 units per acre net. Thank you. I always get tongue-tied on that one, but yes, it's 4 units to the acre net. So that's what those are the land use designations and kind of the direction we're getting from the adopted maps. So take you to the zoning map, show you the current zoning of the property and the adjacent parcels. This map, I did add the updated zoning here that we considered a month or two ago. So subject property, most of it's A110, that's 10-acre agriculture. You've got a bit of 5-acre agriculture up to the northeast. And again, I've noted the general plan and southwest land use designations. Note there's quite a bit of A110 in the area surrounding the property on the kind of the south and kind of southwest and west there, and some on the north. This area up here on the very north, on the kind of the northwest of the property and on the west side of Lakeshore Drive, that's a proposed park. We actually have plans that have been submitted for the park. That's, I think, related to the Delta Restoration Project. So we've seen those plans, and so should make note of that. You can see quite a bit of residential zoning, R18 and R110. We had a comment from a gentleman who said that a lot of the R110, a lot of the R1 zoning was R110, and actually I think quite a bit of it is actually, this area right here is R110, but there's quite a bit of R18 right here. There's quite a bit of R18 right here, and so I think the R18 is pretty prevalent in the to the east. And then you've got this SDP3. This is kind of it's similar to the RA zone, really. It's I think there's some maybe a lot coverage difference, and then there's a restriction on or a requirement for the size of a home in that small SDP3 area. So again, proposed zoning R18 for most of the subject area, 22 acres R18. You've got most of this is owned by one property owner, but you've got an additional, well, all of this is owned by one property owner. You've got an additional property owner here. The Hines family owns this, and they're asking for RA zoning on this roughly 1.5 acres here. So here's the concept plan. The applicant's asking for 68 lots in the R18 zone and 1 lot in the RA zone. Net density is about 3 3/4 units per acre. And one thing I would note, I found out earlier today, so the lot size average here is roughly 11,500, and I had them. I thought we'd get a bigger effect here. I had them take out that larger 1 acre, 1+ acre lot there, and it really only took it down 500 square feet. So essentially, you're looking at 11,500 for the average lot size here, which is more in line with the R110 zone. The applicants proposing to develop this in 3 phases. I think a lot of us are aware of the infrastructure, particularly sewer constraints out on the west side, and there's requirements that limit a development to 40 connections. Then you can bring subsequent phases and get some additional connections that way. So they're proposing to phase this out and work with the city on the sewer connections. So that's what I've got for you. I would note a couple of things. One of the important things in this area is the west side development policies. There's they're a set of policies that were adopted through a public process, and they're important. And so I'll make note of a few of those that, as I reviewed the application and the policies, wanted to note a few of the policies and make a brief comment on them. So one of the first policy is preserve Provo's agricultural heritage and support agriculture for as long as the farmer chooses to farm, or as long as the farmer chooses to farm, I think is operative here. The farmer was Mr. Halliday and his family, and he has sold the property to a developer and has chose to no longer farm the property. Another policy that I would note would be sub-policy 2B. It says to preserve, develop natural amenities for sustained enjoyment by the community. Things like Provo River and the river, the delta shorelines, or lake shorelines and wetlands. So the applicant has given us this concept plan that you can see. He's proposing a couple of connections to the river right here, and connection there. I'm not aware of a trail dedication with this. The applicant can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm not aware of a proposed trail dedication with this one. But you'll recall from the last proposal, the other Halliday proposal called Riverfront Meadows, the Provo Parks and Recs Department voiced some concern about a trail, the city asking for a trail dedication through there. Through that development, some of the things they were concerned about, there were entanglements with the River Delta project, questions about who maintains that area of the trail, because Utah County does have some maintenance jurisdiction on some portions of the trail. So those are a couple of the concerns they had. So back to these, a few more policies here. The next one has been discussed a little bit. We had neighborhood meeting, and this got talked a little bit about. This would be to establish ordinances to require a mix of housing types, lot sizes, designs to accommodate various stages of life. Again, I think I'd note established ordinances. I'm not aware of any ordinances that require a mix of housing types at this time. The applicant has been willing to consider quite a bit of, he's received quite a bit of feedback from the city, from the neighborhood. He's, again, I'd note he's been very receptive. He's chosen to, the neighborhood is strongly expressed a desire to see single family homes here, and so that's what he's proposing. I would also note that the policy regarding mix of housing types seems to be silent on the area where that's to be applied. I don't see anything that says that a mix of housing types is required per development. And so that's a few things staff would note relative to that policy. Sub-policy 3A, or rather 3B, says detached single-family homes should be the predominant housing type, and the use of other types should augment and not detract them from the single-family feel of the area. The applicant here is offered to give us an all single-family development. He did offer one concept plan that had a limited number of attached units in mansion homes. I think there's only 4 mansion homes, and I think each of those had 3 or 4 units each. So that would have offered a few attached units in this neighborhood, and those wouldn't have disrupted the single family nature of the home. But that was presented to the neighborhood, and the neighborhood again is in favor of the proposal presented tonight. The last one I'll mention is development. Sub-policy 6D says development may be limited or deferred depending on the availability of municipal infrastructure. So like I noted earlier, sewer infrastructure is limited in the area. The applicant has a phasing plan that appears to be in line with the policy and actually code provisions allowed in 1503 of the city code for a number of connections up to 40. And so they look like they're acting in compliance with the city code on those connections. Staff feels like this is in line with this proposed rezone and the associated concept plan are in line with the general plan. They're in line with the Southwest Future Land Use Map. We feel like they're pretty well in line with the West Side development policies. There's no mix of housing proposed, but again, staff would note there doesn't appear to be meant for a mix of housing at this point. And so based off what we have to go off of, this looks like it's in line with the general plan and its future land use map. And staff would recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the zone map amendment and then approve the concept plan. So that's what I have for you at this time.
Okay, Brandon, thank you. This one could not be easier for me. I just have one question that I want to get out of the way. It has to do with the idea of there being a trail along the river. I'm not sure that I understood what you said relative to that.
Oh, all I'm saying is I'm not aware of a proposed trail dedication with this proposal. According to the concept plan, I'm not aware that there's a proposed trail dedication there.
Does that mean that there's not land needed to be dedicated to accommodate a trail? Or...
I'm not aware of a trail dedication, a required trail dedication, nor is a trail dedication being proffered or being proposed.
Are there plans for a trail along the south side of the river between the lots and the river here?
That is a good question. I am sorry, I do not know the answer to that. I assume there is a plan for a trail, and I can look that up for you while
okay.
Brandon, do you need me to answer? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
This is Tony Train. Yes, the green areas, the reason why they're shown is so that it can accommodate that trail. There's an existing trail on the west side right there. It's natural, and then that needs to be dedicated in order to get a trail through that location.
Perfect. So, and maybe back to you, Brandon, because you remember what we talked about with the project that's a little bit further to the west. I think the idea there was that rather than maybe to try to build pedestrian facilities and things like that as a part of public streets, the idea was that there maybe be a trail along the river to get people over to the bridge there with the river and that type of a thing. So if that's the plan, great. And that's my only question. Sounds like it's been answered. That's the only reason that you'd see, for example, that what appears to be like a pedestrian crossing there at that one, kind of elbow on the street. So
that would make sense. I would say that I'm told there is a unpaved trail along portions of this river, or along this portion of the river. So
there, it seems to make it all that much more.
Yes.
Probably.
And I do recall, I believe there is, because I'm actually the one reviewing that park, and I believe there is a trail associated with that park. So.
Okay. Great. Commissioner Urquiaga, thanks for your patience. Please go ahead.
I was also curious about the trail, so I'm glad you asked that question. As we talked about the last one that dealt with that general vicinity, one of the things we talked about was the whether the property would need to be raised, whether there's any sort of flooding concern, and I sort of expect this will be the same, but I'd like staff to confirm that those issues have been adequately addressed.
They were discussed. I think Tony Train, if he's willing, could speak to that, because I know he provided some information on that issue for staff.
Okay, I can wait till the applicant's time to speak.
Okay, yeah, we can do it then.
And Mr. Day, I don't know if he's still with us. He may be able to speak to that as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe go back to the trail and maybe give some more information that may be pertinent. The bridges that go over the Provo River, both at Lakeshore Drive and the Lakeview Parkway. The current bridge at Lakeview Drive has a pedestrian vehicle type access on both sides of the river. The next bridge that's being built on the Lakeview Parkway will have the same access on both sides of the river along the river. So like a tunnel underneath the bridge so that a trail can be continuous both north and south sides of the river through this area. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood.
While I'm thinking about it, there's one important thing I should probably mention. The Lakeview Parkway will eventually lie right about here. The city's acquired land all through here for that corridor. So, and yeah, the bridge is under construction. So,
I wondered about not having any local streets from this development connect into properties to the west. Is that at all because of that Lakeshore Drive alignment there? That makes sense to me if that's why.
Yeah, you got the.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
If I could maybe add to that, that embankment goes up there to go over the Provo River. So the road will be elevated above what those homes would need to be. So it kind of makes a connection difficult. It's also a type of facility that we won't probably want a neighborhood access where we have a connection at Center Street. That's probably adequate because this is a arterial type road.
That certainly makes sense to me. Commissioners, any other questions for staff? We'll ask the applicant to add anything.
Applicant, you're welcome to sit here, or you can just speak. They won't see unless you sit here, though. So.
Oh, I can sit there. Yeah. So the only thing with us is the green spot. I thought we were dedicating the access trail to the walking trail. Tony Train will have to comment on that. But we wanted to have access on both sides to the walking trail. In the neighborhood meeting, we talked about paving those because we would prefer to asphalt them just for the looks. But a lot of the neighborhood complained that they didn't like the asphalt. They liked more of the natural dirt look. But we're open to do either scenario on those access trails into the walking trail. But we were planning on donating those access trails to the city as part of but Tony Train can comment on that. And we're planning on bringing the fill in. We have to bring fill in for the sewer. There's going to be parts of the project where we have 4 or 5 feet of fill. Some parts of the project, there's a foot of 18 inches of fill, but Tony Train has better dimensions on all that. So I think if I just let Tony Train speak, he knows more about it than I do.
No, you pretty much covered it. The trail itself, yeah, we'll work with you through the design. We're trying to coordinate with the park design right now on seeing if there's options to get sewer up there to the park through the development rather than have to deal with that pump line. So we know there's going to be some coordination, but yeah, we think it's a great amenity to have this connection along the river, that trail that's existing there. but we just have a few areas that need to be dedicated in order to get the property into the city's name, so the trails work with those bridges. And we'll make sure we get that coordinated upon final design. But that's the gist of it. And yes, there is fill required because it does sit low. You're exactly right. Other than that, we feel it's in line with what the neighbors. I mean, we've tried a few different ideas with the direction of the city council and staff, and the neighborhood came back pretty adamantly, I would say, that they liked this approach best. Any other questions?
Staff, anything else? I'm sorry, staff. Commissioners, any questions of the applicant? Okay, I don't see any hands, so we'll ask the staff to help us open the public hearing.
Before you do that, I just remembered I have a couple of public comments that I could share with you, if like I did last time, just to be fair to those who have given us comments. There is a Sarah Hill who let's try to summarize these. She just stated that she's in full support of the development. She says, I understand the development. She says, the right type of development is crucial, and this one checks all the boxes for me. The west side has a lack of infrastructure and roads that are near capacity. So we must have a development that stays under 4 units per acre in density. She says Provo needs more single family homes so people can stay in Provo. Perfect fit with the Southwest area plan. We've got a gentleman named Rick Smith who said, I appreciate a developer who actually listens to the residents of the neighborhood. This proposed development fits in the very unique spot on Provo Southwest side. The immediately south are custom homes on 1/2 to 1 acre. The east are custom homes of approximately 1/3 acre. Proposed single family homes with an average of 4 lots per acre, including some larger lots, integrates well with the surrounding area. The proposal also extends a unique unpaved equestrian trail on the south side of the river, maintains the character and feel that we love in the area. Then we have another one from a Christian Vomlen. First, he points out that he thinks that he voices his support for the idea of high and mixed density housing, but then he points out that there doesn't seem to really be a call for that. He says, I'm sympathetic to hiring more mixed density housing in Provo, yet I am yet to hear a clear vision of how that should look throughout Provo, let alone in Fort Utah neighborhood. If there's a genuine desire to revisit the future urban plan for Provo, I'd be excited to hear the details of this vision. He says, there's an existing, not only is a few visions for Provo yet to be articulated, not only is a new vision for Provo yet to be articulated, there's an existing vision that has been put in writing, particularly for the region of the city. So he points out that we do have plans already, and that this application lines up with the general plan, with the I want to use his language, particularly with the proposed development is perfectly consistent with the vision and plan. So neighborhood is overwhelmingly in favor of the proposal, and therefore I support the proposal. So, and I did receive one comment from a his first name was Dean, and I believe you may have received this. This was a late comment, but he basically stated that he was not in favor of the proposal. He lives in the adjacent residential neighborhood to the east, and thinks that he stated the R18 proposal is not in line with a lot of the R1. There's a lot of, he said there's a lot of R110 zoning in the area, and that's not in line with the proposal is not in line with the R110 that's in his mind consistent through the area. He feels like it would affect property values. That's another point he brought up. And then he also pointed out that he said he'd be more in favor of the R110 zone, but even at that still is concerned about development in the area. So those are the comments I received, and I just wanted to make sure that that input was given to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
And again, I would note that the neighborhood chair is here, so when that time comes for him.
Okay, thank you. It's the most comment we've had yet tonight. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Whenever somebody's ready to jump in there, we'll go with that.
Neighborhood chair usually speaks first in public hearing, so why don't we hear from him?
Okay, so we've got tell me if you can see this. Can you see that presentation that says Lakeshore Drive Development?
I don't believe so.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. It's great to be able to be with you tonight and present. As I think has been hinted, this has been kind of a major issue in our neighborhood, more than most developments, especially with the alternate plans that were presented and other kind of issues that have stemmed into, what does the neighborhood want to see in development in general? And so out of respect, I'm going to go I'm going to go pretty quick through these, but I'm happy to take any questions afterwards. I want to talk about why the neighborhood supports this, why we favor it, and why we think it's a good fit for our area. First of all, as was mentioned, very strong support. 2 polls were taken because this was presented to the neighborhood first in a meeting in March, and then due to city and city council feedback, some alternatives were created and then presented at a second neighborhood meeting at the beginning of May. At the first one, 100% of those who actually participated in the poll were in favor of the plan that looked very much like this one at that point. And there were about 60 people in that meeting. At the second one, 97% that participated in the poll were in favor. The one who wasn't in favor wanted no development in the area. And so this was the preferred plan for everybody there if it's going to get developed at all. We also had a Facebook post. One of those lucky things, the first 2 comments, the first one was for or against, wanting more density. The other one was for. And you can just look at the likes there. There were 29 likes for this development and only 1 like for a proposal for a higher density. And so, again, you can see quite strong support. Email, 1 was neutral. That was Christian Von Lanes there that said he appreciates both. And then 5 were in favor. I did not see Dean's email at that point, and so that's not part of this number. And then Open City Hall, Brandon already read the comments to you, but they all seem pretty in favor. Now, the big question is why so much support, right? It's rare to see, I think, a development come in that's not providing a park or some sort of amenity where the neighborhood's like, yes, please give this to us. But I think there's several reasons. First, it adheres to the Southwest Plan in our view. This plan has become a very important document for us in the neighborhood. It gives us predictability for the types of developments we can expect coming. It gives the developers predictability, and it really has done a lot to kind of allay concerns of the neighbors and help developments come through more easily because we have something to base it off of, and we believe this one fits in, at least our vision of the Southwest Plan, quite perfectly. The second one is that we believe it improves the housing mix in Provo. Now, this is an interesting one, and I often do this where my neighbors said something and then I went and did some research on it. And in this case, they kept telling me, hey, we know people that when they want to move up to a larger home, kind of get into that permanent home, they move out of Provo, and we wish people could stay. So I went and I looked at the Planning Commission approvals over the last 2 years to see if that's true. And it turns out that even though consumer preference of Gen Z by a Freddie Mac survey says that 6 to 1 people prefer a single family home, in Provo, Planning Commission approvals are 8 to 1 in favor of apartments. We approve a lot of apartments in this city, not very many single family homes. In fact, right now, over the last 2 years, we've only approved 250 single family homes total.
And so this provides a housing type that I believe is in very short supply in this city, would help stabilize our demographics, stabilize our tax base, recruit more businesses to the city, et cetera. It also preserves the open feel of the area. We've talked about the trail. When you have larger yards, animals often in our area nest in there. We have ducks in our backyard every year. And by having a single family home feel, that helps preserve that openness and kind of connection with nature. And then finally, and this is probably the biggest issue for my neighborhood, and that is that we very heavily rely on Center Street. There's a river behind us, right? And so there is no other exit from my neighborhood other than to Center Street. In fact, this was driven home to me a while back when unfortunately a young girl was hit on Center Street and the police blocked off the road. And I literally had no way to get to my house. It was completely blocked off because that is our only access to the neighborhood. And so we're very sensitive to traffic on that road. And again, I went and looked at the numbers. And if you look at the Southwest Plan, what kind of open space we expect to get developed over time, and the city's traffic studies, you find that you really cannot go any more dense than 3 homes per acre gross or 4 homes acre net in this area without overloading Center Street, causing traffic issues, and potentially a very expensive widening of the road reconfiguration of the infrastructure. So I think this is an excellent example of it's better for us to live within our means from a traffic infrastructure point of view, and keep the density down rather than allow higher density and then have really high expenses to maintain the infrastructure to support it. So that's everything that I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to comment tonight?
There are no public comments at this time. Brandon, can you change it to the public comment screen?
Yep, you bet.
And 45 seconds.
Can you see that, Na?
We're still seeing the presentation.
Presentation, okay. Let's.
No public comments.
Okay, wonderful. We will close the public hearing then. Commissioners, any questions of staff or the applicant? Any discussion? I don't see any hands. I mentioned earlier, I think that for me, this is pretty easy. I think really from every perspective. So easy for me to support approving the proposed concept plan and recommending approval of the proposed zone change. Commissioner Jensen.
For whatever it's worth, I don't think that R18 and R110 zoning are incompatible uses next to each other. I don't really think that you will notice, because of the design, I don't think you'll notice that small amount of lot size difference that may occur. So I don't have any problem with the issues that were raised.
Well, certainly second that. I think it would take a very keen eye to recognize any difference between the two neighborhoods.
The smallest lot, I think that's proposed is 8,300. But again, as I was, scanning the different lot sizes, it was a really good mix. But boy, there's a lot of lots that are, larger than 9 950, 10,000 square feet. And again, the average lot size is 11,500 approximately.
These awkward pauses often lead to a motion. If anybody is ready for that, I get the feeling that we might be there. Commissioner Jensen.
I think I have a lower tolerance for the awkward pauses than someone like maybe Commissioner Gonzalez, who never says anything. Just kidding. I would like to make a motion that we approve the proposed concept plan. Item number 5, Jason Bennett requests concept plan approval for a 69 lot residential subdivision located at approximately 200 North Lakeshore in a proposed R18 zone.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Oh yeah, we heard from Mr. Gonzalez.
Who beat out by Robert.
I had to after you called me out, Lisa.
That was a bias there, just in front of Commissioner Knudsen. So motion to approve the proposed concept plan, item number 5 by Commissioner Jensen, seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez. Any discussion on the motion? See any hands? So back to Commissioner Jones.
She left at the beginning of this item discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, so we'll excuse her for the rest of the night. Commissioner Urquiaga.
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Instead of 6-0, it's 5-0. The motion carries. And we are on to item number 6.
I'm happy to make a motion for this one too.
Please go for it.
If it's useful to have a comment beforehand, the quote in the how to know when it's good to make a zone change request or not is, as long as the farmer chooses to farm. I don't have a problem rezoning agricultural land to residential uses when no one is choosing to farm it. So that having been said, as a little side note, I would like to make a motion that we recommend a positive recommendation. We're forwarding a positive recommendation to the municipal council for a zone change from A110 and A15 to R18 for 68 single family lots, and from A15 and A110 to the RA zone for 1 lot located at approximately 200 North Lakeshore Drive.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Good. All right, the table's turned. Commissioner Knudsen, once again by a hair. So motion to recommend approval by Commissioner Jensen, seconded by Commissioner Knudsen. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
See no hands. So back to the new top of the list. Commissioner Urquiaga.
Aye.
Commissioner Lisa Jensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Knudsen.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So once again, motion carries 5-0. I believe that's all of our business for tonight. Do we have anything else, staff? Any commissioners, anything?
No, sir.
Okay, great. Say, I really regret that I kind of got caught between 2 meetings at the beginning tonight and wasn't quite ready to just share a couple of thoughts that I want to share quickly. Deborah Jensen let us know after the last meeting that the last meeting was her last meeting. She has accepted new employment and is moving on. And I wanted to say this earlier. I doubt that she'll necessarily even get this, but for whatever it's worth, I've worked with a lot of volunteers that work as planning commissioners and in other capacities, and she was exceptional in terms of the sense of just class and dignity that she served with. And when she ran meetings, it was with a unique kind of courtesy, even when some things got pretty emotional. She was a great example in terms of how to prepare for meetings. I oftentimes sat right next to her and could see her notes and that type of a thing. And she served the residents of Provo in an absolutely exceptional way. And I wish I could have said that maybe when she was here to hear it. But for whatever it's worth, we'll miss her. I think the city will miss her. And that's it for me. So if there's nothing else for tonight, somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I would like to echo your sentiment and then move to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I want to second it, but it's hard to get the words out because I too am sad at Deborah's loss. Or at our loss of Deborah. That will be hard for us.
Yeah.
Will be missed.
So that was a second disguised in that in case you missed it because of the emotion in my voice and everything.
Okay, with my vote to approve it, I know that's 3 of us. So we'll just say we're adjourned without any objection and look forward to getting together again in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
The recording has stopped.